Hey gang, Spacetime Badass here. So, I'm feeling pretty good today. I got up pretty friggin' early, which is not typical for me. I had a really light and somehow fulfilling breakfast, which is also not very typical for me. I noticed that due to my asymmetrical face, my part was better suited to be on this side, so you're probably going to watch me fix it the wrong direction a time or two and look really ridiculous. So we're all feeling good, did a couple of things. Um, Feeling better. Um, as known in one of my other videos, I started feeling a little melancholy, which it happens from time to time. I'm more melancholy more than not, but things are picking up. Things are changing a little bit lately, and I really just owe that to inward introspection and lucid dreaming, self-realization, actualization, that sort of thing. But today, I just want to talk about thinking without the inner monologue. Let me get this fixed. That look better. Yeah, a little better. Okay, I want to talk today about thinking without the inner monologue. So, if you're not aware, the inner monologue is the words that you think in your head at any given point. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to do this now, or I'm kind of bored, I want to do this, like you're thinking in linguistic terms, thinking in words. And, everybody thinks like this now since the dawn of language. But believe it or not, there was a point in our history before we had language, so we couldn't speak, we didn't have these words or these terms to think in, we just had our purest thoughts, which is like intention, ideas, emotions, notions, without really being too specific about it. Obviously, primitive human beings were still as intelligent as we are today, yet they just didn't have the linguistic aspect to it, and they didn't have the technology, so things had to evolve a little bit. But, excuse me. So, the reason I want to talk about this basically is because when dealing with lucid dreaming, out of body experiences, your worst enemy can sometimes be your own thoughts. So, for instance, if you're in the hypnagogic state and you're just kind of waiting for that dream to come on, you're just kind of seeing the lights, the patterns, cartoony kind of things like that, color. And if you're thinking to yourself while that's occurring, you're going to snap yourself right out of it. And as well with out of body experiences, for instance, if you're in the vibrational stage and excuse me, if you're in the vibrational stage and you start thinking, like, oh my god, it's finally happening, or, I gotta leave my body, or this is gonna be so cool. You're thinking these things, and that can also snap you right out of it, as well as like emotions. So you have to keep your mind, the monologue, your emotions kind of in check, and approach everything like accepting and kind of with a sense of being jaded almost. Like in lucid dreams, a way to describe it is that like if you finally become lucid, you get really excited and you just kind of freak out there. A big emotional response will cause the dream to come to an end. Excuse me, drink here. So for these reasons, it's great to learn to think without the monologue when you need to, and to kind of keep yourself contained. Mainly, I want to speak about the excuse me. Mainly, I want to speak about thinking without the linguistic terms, without the words, which seems kind of silly and kind of foreign if you don't know like the context behind it. So the first time that I experienced this kind of clarity of thought without words was just when I was starting to get into meditation. And it was one of the first or second times that I actually sat down to meditate, where I actually entered this meditative state. And it did take a while to get to that point for me. Everybody goes at their own pace, but when that occurs, you can kind of recognize that. Obviously, that's basically what meditation is kind of this clarity of thought and this stillness. You still have thoughts, but you kind of push them out, and eventually you do reach a point where there are no thoughts, which is, meditation. But similar to that, before you really reach the meditative state, you kind of start thinking in these more abstract, these more um, idea kind of based thoughts rather than articulation. And the first real time that I noticed that I was doing this was right after I finished this meditative session. And I mean, I really only actually meditated like for maybe like 15 minutes. You know, I sat down for a while to do it. And then I mean, I'm pretty sure I only meditated for just like, it's hard to tell when you're meditating, but it was maybe 10 or 15 minutes, not very long at all. And after I was done, I just kind of got up and then I started getting the bed ready, preparing things to get ready to go to sleep without really thinking about it. It's also very similar to if you're driving. So if you're a driver, obviously, you get to a point with driving where you can drive and get to where you're needing to go. You can do all of the driving things that you need to do, like your turn signal, the brake, the gas, looking, you know, where everything's at. You can do all of these things without thinking about them at a certain point with driving, especially if you drive for like a long period of time. And there were times when I first recognized that happened, where I would just be driving and I would drive for a good 20 minutes before I realized I haven't been thinking at all, or I haven't been thinking about driving at all, and yet I've just been driving and everything has been fine. So it's kind of like similar to that. Basically what it is making the effort. Just thinking. Yes, you can still think and not have words behind it. You can think a lot without there being words, and this is something that I actually practice in my day-to-day life. Not, you know, all of the time. Obviously, there are times when it's more efficient and more prudent to think in words, and it's not something that you can completely control. You have to actually focus on it, because otherwise you'll revert back to thinking in words, because that's just how our brains have developed. We've been doing it for our whole stinking lives since we've been talking, so it's kind of one of those things that's pretty difficult to cut out. And, you know, why would you? Because you need to have language, obviously, to communicate. Yeah, for lucid dreaming out of body experiences, you need to learn how to think without words. So how do you do this? Now, as I stated previously, meditation is a really good way to get this started for yourself, to actually kind of understand what it's like. And once you know what it's like, you can kind of force yourself back into this mode without much effort. But I mean, I'm a firm believer that you can learn to do it without meditation. But meditation itself takes practice and work, so this will take, I would say, an adequate amount of practice and work as well. You can practice this. I mean, when laying down for bed would probably be most beneficial and easiest to get the time to do. You know, you don't want to take time out of your day usually to do certain things, especially just kind of learn to quiet your linguistic thoughts. So yeah, that would be a good time to practice. And I mean, what I generally do, like since I've done it before, I'll just lay down and I'll just kind of force myself into that mindset. But if you don't already know what that's like, it's basically, I'm trying to think of like a good way to put it. It's a thing that's more difficult to explain, but once you do it, you get it, and it's super easy. So like, basically, with meditation, there are people will be like, okay, I need to force myself not to think now, rather than allowing the thoughts to come and then let them pass away. And so you end up thinking about not thinking and trying to think. But basically what I did is, whenever a thought would enter my brain, I would label that thought. I think this is Vespanessa meditation. If you have a thought, you will kind of categorize that thought, label that thought, and then let it go. And it's super easy. So like, if you get a feeling, it's like, oh, hungry, so need, gone. If you think, you know, like, oh, I want to do this later, it's desire, and then it's gone. And then you just go back to like the focusing on the breath. And focus is a really a good tool for this as well. So if you want to think without the um, the words, you can focus like on your breath, or you can focus on anything. You can look at something and just visually take it in, and not really think words. Um, Focus, yeah, do that as well if you would want. That's another method I'm gonna say is just focusing on something. So this works really well with just looking at something. So if it's like, yeah, I'm gonna look at this lighter, and you just kind of allow yourself to zone out and just kind of look at it and then take it in, and then eventually you'll get to a point where you'll probably not be thinking at all. But before that, you're going to reach a point where you're thinking in these kind of like terms. So it's like, okay, you're looking at it and you note the shape, or you note something you didn't notice before, like the color seems to pop to you, or just like there's something about it that you're observing. That you're experiencing, but you aren't labeling it or quoting about it in your inner monologue, and that's the point that you want to be. Excuse me. Um, so with like going to bed and laying down and doing this as well. You can do this without doing the meditative kind of techniques of like, label it, get it out of there, focus on your breath. But sometimes what I have done to get this to happen is that anytime that you have a linguistic thought, you just squelch it. Just get it out of there. Memories are a good thing, because you can think of memories without accessing the linguistic part of your brain, unless it's like a memory where so and so said this, or I said this and it was like that. So if you just remember like watching a sunset, or if you remember like doing something, just something without language in it, if you kind of focus on that memory, you will go over that, and you're not thinking with words at that time. So stuff like that. But another thing is, like, anytime you find yourself thinking a thought of linguistic terms and that inner monologue, anytime you find yourself thinking that, like, as soon as it starts, as soon as you think a word, just boom, get it out of there. It's gone. And then eventually you're going to reach this kind of plateau where it's like you can still think, you get like ideas and concepts, but it's not being defined by language. And that's what we want, and that's what you need to actually get out of body, if you're in the vibrational stage, or to go into to like hold yourself off to get in that lucid dream if you're in the hypnagogic state. So basically, yeah, this is what you want. It's not that you don't have to think, it's that you have to learn to think in more primitive terms, because this was our original way of thinking before language occurred. And so it's this very kind of ancestral, innate, basic human ability that we don't use much anymore, because we have language. And that's a good thing. That it's kind of a thing that'll make you feel a little bit kind of closer to nature, I guess, and just the self, and being human and being alive, and with everything else, if you can kind of have that clarity in that sort of lacking linguistic thought kind of way. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of circular in a way, but it's difficult to describe, again, unless you experience it. But it can make you feel kind of closer with everything, and I think that is overall good, and it's sort of like meditation in that way. It's like the almost meditation, but not quite. But once you experience it, you can get right back into it anytime. In fact, like with my girlfriend and I, we'd play this, not really a game, but where we would be doing something, and we're driving and it's quiet, and it's like, so what are you thinking? It's like, oh, I was just thinking about this, I was thinking that. And I think it's a fun thing to do, just to get to know someone, and just even once you already know someone really well, it's just like a good way to share and become closer to a person. And over the course of time, since I've been starting to like kind of get into this primitive thought kind of thing to aid with lucid dreaming and out of body experiences. It's been more and more to the point where it's like, so what are you thinking? It's like, oh, I wasn't really thinking anything. And like, well, you must be thinking something. And it's like, yeah, kinda, but it's not like something that I could really convey, with language in a weird way. It's really funny how it's kind of put that thing a little bit, made that game a little bit harder, but made a lot of things in my life a lot easier. There's less worry, I mean, you can still think about the worry, but more so when you're thinking in these terms, it's more like noticing things around you. It's more like being in the moment, which is another good thing for lucid dreaming and out-of-body experience, is the awareness of the right now, the eternal moment. There's, when you're not, reminiscing over the past or thinking of the future, you are experiencing the now, the constant now. It has always been life. All of life has always been one constant moment unraveling. And if you're here for that, if you're present for that, you're closer to everything else. So you're more aware in your life, you're happier, you're more aware in your dreams, you're happier. So overall, it's just a good life thing to learn. And like, to speak to what I mentioned a little bit earlier, with, what was it? Like not squelching, but like acknowledging your inner emotions without allowing them to cloud your thoughts and overwhelm you. So like, that'll put a dream to end if you're lucid and you kind of freak out. You just have to approach everything as if you've been there before, as if it's not something new and completely unknown. It's something that you're familiar with and something that you accept, and it's just like whatever, like I just let it go, kind of, in a way. So I've frequently found myself in my lucid dreaming career, I've found myself in these sort of nightmarish situations. And typically I don't have nightmares if I don't lucid dream anyway. Like, I haven't had a true nightmare, straight up, I'm scared nightmare, since I was a child and my grandmother made me a dream catcher. And I still have that. I have that dream catcher hanging up over there. You can see I have back here, I have a dream catcher. I've got like 3 or 4 dream catchers hanging in this room because I just have this kind of kinship with them. I made that one, made that one. This is one my grandma got me. I love dream catchers. But I haven't had a nightmare, like, truly, since I was a child. And like, as soon as my grandma made me that dream catcher and told me this will make your nightmare stop, I believed it, and it did. But sorry, need nicotine. But with that, I just lost my train of thought. Thanks. But anyway, like, yeah. So I would find myself in these nightmarish situations since I started becoming lucid, which is really weird because most of the time when people have nightmares, they become lucid, and that allows them to overcome the nightmares, which is good. But being present for your dreams, oftentimes you may not remember your dreams. You have 3 to 7 dreams in a night anyway, so one of those could always be a nightmare. You just kind of don't remember it. But if you're present for your dreams as often as I am, then you'll notice when things are starting to try to become scary or nightmarish, and you can avoid that. But lately I've been saying, I'm not going to avoid my nightmares anymore. I'm going to let my nightmares come, and I'm going to deal with these issues, and I'm going to grow as a person. But in the past, when I was like kind of not letting things become nightmarish at all, when I would notice a thing or two started to be really scary and kind of friggin' weird, I would just kind of revert back to this way of thinking and of being jaded, and it's like, oh, it's just this, whatever, it's just a dream, it's stupid, it's like, or just like go on, don't even rationalize it even. If you're doing something and you get really fucking scared, just turn around and fucking walk away, and it's over, it's gone, just whatever. So with trying to think of another example with like being jaded. So focus is your real big ally on this. Focus. Because if you're in the vibrational stage and you get excited that you're in the vibrational stage, pretty soon that'll come to a close. Now, there is a bit of leeway For me at least, there's a bit of leeway when you get into the vibrational stage, and you can think a thought or two, brief linguistic thought, without it coming to a close. But if you indulge that and you keep going to it, it'll for sure bring it to a close. So there is like a small amount of leeway for you to feel that emotion, for you to think that thought, as long as you deal with it really quickly. So, like, for instance, you get in the vibrational stage, you get excited, just focus on either the vibrations, the sound, the feeling, your breath. Just bring that focus elsewhere rather than the emotion. So you feel the emotion, move on, kind of take a deep breath kind of outlook to it, which I always hated, was just like, you're really pissed off, well, take a deep breath. No. But for this, it is something that applies, and it's something that's really valid. You just have to focus elsewhere. Focus is really key with all of this stuff, I will say. Like, again, back like to this, so it's like, yeah, you want to think without the inner monologue. Just focus on something, and once you're focusing on something, that'll bring you to the moment to where you don't need to think in linguistic terms. And eventually you'll get to a point where you can just kind of go about your business and not really be thinking in words, but thoughts still come to mind. It's kind of equivalent as well to like something that, like, maybe something, it's not something that I've researched, but it's something that I have experienced, and I just kind of assume other people experience as well, where there's kind of like secondary thoughts, I guess I kind of refer to them as. So if you're thinking something, if you're already on a train of thought, even if it's linguistic, and you're thinking out these words, and you have a thought, and then there's like another thought beneath the surface that can kind of occur simultaneously, and it's about something completely different. It's kind of like that, only where your mind is more clear. So consider just like a clear mind the baseline of thought that you would be on already. Just imagine that just being a blank slate, and that secondary thought kind of comes up, and you don't really have to articulate the second thought for it to occur to you. So like if you're thinking linguistic terms, if you're thinking the inner monologue, and that's like that thought's going on, and then the second thought comes up about something else, and you're already in the middle of articulating another thought, and you finish out that thought, there's still this thought down here beneath the surface that occurred to you, but you didn't label, you didn't define it, you didn't think the words to make that idea, but the idea still rose. And that's really what we're trying to get to here. I hope I've done a good job of explaining this and how to achieve it. Meditation, focus, squelching of linguistic thoughts until you reach that point. I would say, probably the easiest would be, it's weird when the easiest would be meditation, but I probably focus is good too, but I didn't really come to the focus practice until I had already tried meditation, so it's hard for me to say. Meditation is really a great tool for a lot of the things that I kind of talk about on my channel, but yeah, meditation, just even if it's just like you meditate, maybe 5 minutes a day, you give it a try, or even less than that, until you actually reach one point where you're meditative. And then I guarantee you that if you get one or two sessions where you're like, you've truly meditated correctly, then you will understand what I mean, and this will make way more sense to you, and you'll be able to do this more in your everyday life. And this is something that not like the thinking without the linguistic terms, but being in the moment. This can cause you, if you do this, to be more present in the moment, and that's something that Beelzebub talks about in the Astral Codex, as well, I think, as the Awakening of Perception, which are both really good free ebooks that you can get from his website. But he talks about that sort of thing a lot, being in the moment, being present, and that's something that I agree with, and I think that most people who are in this sort of thing can agree with, that being in the moment is pretty much everything spiritually. If you're in the moment, you're more one with everything else, you're more in tune with all of that, you're experiencing the now, rather than thinking about the past, the future, that any sort of thing. And really great things can happen, beautiful moments can happen if you allow yourself to experience them in the right now. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get across and talk about. A little more lengthy kind of video it looks like here, but that's alright. It's something that takes a little time to kind of explain, to get understood, to easier to be understood. But yeah, I think that's it. Hope this works for you. Hope I've described it well enough. Thanks for watching. I am Spacetime Badass. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and be a pal.